So Nicola Kelly, journalist and author of Anywhere But Here, How Britain's Broken Asylum System Fails Us All. Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start maybe by talking about earlier this month, the plans that the government announced. So the government on the 12th of May launched a white paper which sort of sets out its plans to reform the immigration system. Could you just explain for us and talk us through what the kind of proposals are that the Labour government is suggesting now to change the immigration system? What would a shake-up involve?
Yeah, there was a number of different things proposed. I thought the main things were axing the care worker visa route. And another part of it was doubling the amount of time for the route to settlement. And there were some elements around international students in that route as well, which was kind of less of a cut than was expected. On the care worker visa route, this was quite a significant change, and one that I don't think was expected. The government, it seems to me, think of the health and social care visa route as a tap that they can sort of turn on and off depending on the net migration figure. And in this case, Starmer didn't particularly like that the net migration figure was higher than he wanted to see. We saw in 2022 that under the Conservative government, post-pandemic, they expanded the social care and visa route to bring in more care workers to fill some of those vacancies. Then again, the net migration figure spiked a little bit too high for the Conservative government's liking. So they contracted that route and said that they were not going to allow care workers to bring in their dependents. A few days after that announcement was made, I got on a train and I went to a care home in Scarborough. And I shadowed a registered nurse called Evans, who had come over from Ghana in 2022 as part of the expansion of that route. And I spoke to him and some of his colleagues. I think there was 31 overseas workers who had come over in 2022, mainly from India and West Africa. And they told me that when they heard about this announcement, they stood in front of the TV and they cried because they thought they had come over, a year before. They thought they were going to be able to bring in their children and their spouses. And they thought that it started from that moment. They wouldn't be able to see their families for 4 more years. This axing of the route goes quite a step further. The owner of that care home, St. Cecilia's in Scarborough, said at the time in 2023 that they basically relied on overseas workers to stay afloat. And while he didn't like to say it as a business owner, that without those overseas workers, they would likely have to close. And I think we're probably going to be seeing more of that.
Just a second, when you said before that the number 31, you meant at that home particularly?
Yes, exactly. 31 overseas care workers. So I think it was about half the staff were overseas care workers and the rest were British local recruits. So Starmer somehow is going to fill some of these 131,000 vacancies through local recruits and through a pool of people that have been brought over in good faith to fill some of these vacancies who have then found that there are no jobs to go to. How he will fill those vacancies remains to be seen. I think it's quite ambitious to say that he can fill 131,000 vacancies through this pool of people. So that's one aspect of it. Then the other aspect was the route to settlement doubling from 5 years to 10 years. Starmer said that he was committed he wanted people to come to Britain who were committed to integration. And so far as I see it, his proposals will have the exact opposite effect. So there's 1.5 million people estimated to already be in the UK who will now have to wait a further 5 years to be settled, to have indefinite leave to remain. The costs are absolutely astronomical. So on average, it costs about £10,000 for a 5-year route. So that will double to around £20,000 for visas, for all the different tests that people need to do, English language tests, the cost of naturalisation itself. That will likely drive, many economists say that could likely drive many people into poverty, into potential exploitation. They won't have access to support from the state during that time or benefits.
Because they don't have recourse to public
exactly
when they're on that route and they don't yet have indefinite leave to remain.
Exactly right. So they'll have to wait 5 more years or potentially more than that to be able to settle and integrate into their communities.
Just, I mean, over the course of the weekend since that was announced, just in my day-to-day life, I've encountered so many people who were talking about this and how that's going to affect them. And I think it's a lot of people who've come here to work are then thinking, well, should I even stay, or do I uproot myself where I've been trying to settle here? So I think, I mean, it's really sad, the kind of human cost for some of these people who are trying to build a life.
I think it's fundamentally unjust, or lots of people are saying to me, it feels fundamentally unjust that they came here in good faith thinking, they could have gone to a number of different countries. They chose Britain to put down their roots, to, potentially educate their children, to find jobs and to settle and integrate into their communities. They may have started to do that, and they may have school places for their children. And now those roots that they're trying to lay down will effectively be uprooted again.
If we try and understand sort of why the government has pursued this approach, there are those, overhead immigration figures that Starmer's been trying to get down. That's one thing. But he also often talks about, rejuvenating the economy, growth and that kind of thing. So, I mean, how do you understand the reasoning behind this decision? Is it grounded in research that says the economy will benefit, young people get into work, or do you find the meaning somewhere else?
It's clear to me that the rise of reform and the local elections had a massive impact on this announcement. They kind of needed to issue a white paper. They needed to issue quite drastic measures on immigration because of what Reform are proposing, which is net zero migration. Labour can never compete with that message. Farage has a particularly potent set of messages on immigration. He always has done. Successive prime ministers and governments haven't been able to compete with Farage on this. Cameron tried to do it with his tens of thousands proposal. Boris Johnson tried to do it. Rishi Sunak with the Stop the Boats pledge, and now Starmer with Smash the Gangs and this immigration white paper. So it's clear to me that it's about reform and the rise of reform in the polls. Actually, net migration and the figure has been dropping steadily for over a year. That's in part because net migration spiked because of the Ukraine and the Hong Kong visas. Almost nobody comes through that route now. International students, which also formed part of the white paper, that route has massively contracted because people who had deferred their courses because of COVID have now come over and are now completing their courses and going back to their countries of origin. And the care worker visa route had already reduced by 80%. The visas were already down 80% for that route. Clearly, with the measure to completely axe that route, that will reduce even further. But it looks like the figures are already steadily dropping. So Labour didn't really need to do any of this, but they were just doing it because they had to. They felt they had to probably do something to counter the reform narrative.
What do we know about what the public actually want? Is Labour completely wrong that there's a large voting public that wants to see measures like this? People actually, do people already think that migration is going down and they realise the NHS relies on carers and nurses from overseas?
I think because the reform rhetoric is so potent on this, it's difficult to see, and the messages are so simple, it's difficult to see for people to see potentially until some of those changes are implemented and it has a direct impact on families and communities. I think probably Labour won't, nobody will really see the effects that some of these measures have. The polling shows that British people on the whole want people who are going to arrive in the country and integrate within their communities. They don't want people that are going to be on the peripheries. And on the whole, there was a world values survey, and consistently year on year, we see that British people are more welcoming in the main than most other countries around the world. So we know that this isn't, the narrative isn't what reform suggests that it is, that actually British people on the whole are welcoming of migrants and want them to be integrating and want them to contribute to the economy.
At the same time as announcing that the UK is looking to send people whose asylum claims have been turned down to foreign detention centres, or as they're calling them, return hubs in third countries. And this, seems very like the kind of Rwanda policy that was plotted out under the previous Conservative governments. You write in your book that Priti Patel, when she was Home Secretary, was kind of fixated on this as an option. So, I mean, how does this new suggestion of return hubs, of potentially somewhere in the Balkans, compare with the Tories' Rwanda plan?
You're right to say it's not dissimilar. Externalisation is a policy that the Conservatives and now Labour seems to be pursuing. We know that it doesn't particularly work. It tends to be pretty costly, as we saw with Rwanda, £700 million of taxpayers' money completely wasted, a grounded flight and, humiliation, embarrassment for the government. It also leads to a range of different human rights abuses, arbitrary detention, etc. So it doesn't really work. Italy's proposed deal with Albania, I think they've had 40 people or so have been brought over to Albania. It's absolutely tiny numbers. Again, like through force and under duress, these people are removed. They protest their innocence until the last moments. It's a policy that doesn't tend to work. It hasn't worked for the UK in the past. It hasn't worked for many other countries.
Nicola, thank you so much for sharing that and all of your thoughts and reporting and wisdom with us today. It's been great to speak with you.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This interview was from an episode of the Prospect podcast. To listen to the episode in full, including further discussion and our weekly banger and dud section, click the link in the description below. And to read more of Prospect's award-winning journalism, head to prospectmagazine.co.uk.